go there. All right, everyone. Welcome to another episode of the Morning Locker. And today I am super excited because I have an old friend of mine, Mike Shul, on with me. He is a martial artist, a pro fighter, a coach, and was selected for the Disney College program. He joined the Air Force and served overseas, and he hails from Buffalo, New York, where I'm also from, as everyone probably knows. But in Buffalo, he actually currently teaches at Western New York MMA. He's one of the instructors, and he also attends the University of Buffalo, where he is also the treasurer of the Veterans Business Association. So, Mike, thank you so much for coming on, man. How are you doing?
I'm good, man. Thanks for having me. It's nice to catch up. It's been a while.
It
I
absolutely
miss our
has.
aggressive snuggle sessions.
Yeah, I know, right? I missed the training.
Yeah, man.
So I know that you've had a pretty long career in martial arts for somebody of your age. You started very
Mhm.
early. What was your initiation to combat sports in general? What was that first thing that you started out doing?
When I was really little, probably like 7, my mom got me into karate, like a local karate place down the road from where we lived. And that was pretty cool. Obviously, when you're young, as you know from teaching the kids classes, it's more so about discipline and controlling yourself and all that stuff. So I started doing karate, and as I got more into it, wanted to compete, test my skills. And so I did a karate tournament in Ohio, drove down to this tournament. My first match, point sparring. I'm like super amped up, like little me is hyped up, and I just punch this kid in the chest as hard as I could, and I get DQ'd because the kid starts crying, and we're kids. And so I'm like, this sucks. I'm super upset because of course they stop the thing and bring us into the center, and they're like DQ. And I'm like, damn, you know how it is, jiu-jitsu tournaments, man. So I'm like super discouraged. It's my first thing ever. So I go off the mat or the floor, whatever it was. And my mom's like, it's okay. Like, you made that kid cry. So, who really won? I'm like, yeah, but that kid got a medal and I got disqualified. So this doesn't make any sense to me. So there was right down the street from where my mom was working at the time was a boxing gym. So she was like, okay, if you can find a way, it was like $20 a month.
Yeah.
She's like, if you can find a way to pay for this boxing club, I will let you go. So I was doing chores around the house or whatever, trying to raise some money. And so I saved up enough money to pay for a couple months. She was like, all right, if you can dedicate yourself to go every day, I'll let you go. All right, cool. So my first week of boxing, super boring. I'm pretty sure my first day, all I threw was a jab. And then as I did a whole week of learning the basics. And then my second week, I got into the ring to let me spar with this Golden Gloves kid. And he just put a whooping on me. But whatever, maybe I was just too young and ignorant to know when enough was enough. But I just kept coming in, and after we finished the session, he was like, "Ah, good job, man. We'll get it in tomorrow too." And I was like, oh, okay, this is what it is. I'm just gonna get my butt kicked by this kid every day. And then the rest was history. We just started training. I had my first fight when I was right before I turned 13. Won my fight, it was super crazy because I had no idea what was going on. And then just kept doing it. My coach was like, okay, there's fights this weekend. Do you want to fight? And I'm like, I'm 13, I got nothing else going on.
Yeah, so let's
So
let's uh let's talk about that because most 13-year-olds wouldn't, be able to tell their friends, "Hey, you know what I did last weekend?"
Um, it
So
was
what was
it was
that? What was that like as I assume an eighth grader or whatever,
mhm.
going to school and obviously not having friends who probably understood what
Yeah, no
you're.
one, not a
Yeah.
single person. So it was it was cool. I didn't really obviously it was my thing. It's hard to do that on the outside, compete. I mean, training is one thing, but actually competing and not everyone in school knowing oh, this kid's the boxer. So it was cool. I guess that kept me from getting picked on. I used to get picked on a lot when I was little, so
Yeah,
doing boxing kind of like kept kids like, okay, I don't want this kid who knows how to punch me. But at the same time, like I just kind of did my own thing and didn't like take advantage of the fact that I did do that. And I was more concerned with like competing and just like getting better to worry about other stuff. So I guess in a way it kind of kept me on the right path, as opposed to
absolutely.
getting into some, I don't know, like worrying about nonsense.
And I know that you had talked about your first competition and what was like that you didn't even really
Dude.
know what was going on.
So it was crazy. So the way boxing worked for me when I was young, I don't know if it was because of the way my coach is or whatever, but they wouldn't match you up prior to going to the event. Basically,
Really?
you had like you had like a fighter passport. They just called it your book.
Wow.
And pretty much like anytime you went to an event you competed, they had this like little like USA boxing book, and they'd write down your opponent's name, their record and whatever, and they'd stamp it like with the event or whatever. And so I showed up, and when you were under 18 or had like under a certain amount of fights, there were like certain parameters for boxing. Like you can only have, they had to be less than 2 year gap in age, and like the weight had to be within like 10 or 15 pounds or whatever.
Yeah.
um and there's different like kind of similar to jujitsu where like different ranks have different like time limits and stuff. There was the same thing. So being in like my age bracket, it was like a 1 minute round with a 1 minute rest, which was awesome. So I showed up and like weighed in, and there was one kid, he was like 15 pounds heavier than me, and he was like 22 and a half months older. So like like just barely made it. And so I'm like, okay, like this is cool. Like I'm gonna do this. And amateur boxing, you wear headgear, you have to wear like a tank top and like obviously gloves and a cup and
Yeah.
whatever. So I was like pretty geared up, and it just, I don't know, for whatever reason, I didn't there was no pressure in the moment. I was just going out there. And since the rounds were so short, I'm like, just like no stop. It was just like, you know how when you're training and sometimes you do like a 1-2 drill on the bag for like 30 seconds or whatever.
Yeah.
Well, that's pretty much how like the whole round. It just went out and just threw 1-2s nonstop, and I ended up like getting a finish in the second round, and like had no idea what it all meant. So like I'm just going out throwing these 1-2s like the whole round,
Yeah.
landing, and the ref kept like breaking us and whatever, giving them standing 8 counts, and I didn't even know what the rules were. So I was just like, okay, I'm gonna go out and punch this kid. And like, so finally, like, I didn't even know, because when the ref breaks, usually they'll send you to a neutral corner. I
Yeah.
didn't even know what that meant. So finally, like, I go to the corner and I look at the ref, and I'm like waiting for him to like tell us to go. And I'm like what's happening? Nothing's. And then I look over at my corner, and they're like cheering and stuff. I'm like, okay, this is good.
Oh, so it's good.
And yeah, I'm like, okay, coach is happy, so that's good. And yeah, so then the rest was history, and competed at that same venue a couple times. Thought you get a couple wins
Yeah.
under your belt, especially
And
at a young age. You think you're like on fire, and then lost. And once I lost to a kid that I already beat before,
yeah.
then after that, people were, my coach was kind of worried, like, okay, this kid's had a couple wins. Hopefully, this doesn't like force him to leave. But thankfully, for maybe stubbornness or whatever, I was like, okay, I got to fight that kid again and get whatever. So it worked out for a while.
Yeah, absolutely. And then so boxing was a big part of your early experiences in combat
Mhm.
sports, but eventually you made the shift because now you are a professional fighter. You're a professional mixed martial arts fighter. You've competed in jujitsu. What was that transition like for you from boxing to the larger world of combat sports?
It was interesting to say the least. Anyone who's gone to like a straight boxing gym, like the sparring is way different. Like very aggressive, and just the sport is totally different.
Yeah.
It's like comparing, like baseball to softball or something like that. So when I did my first Muay Thai class, I was like 15, like almost 16, and I was sparring this guy. And I'm just used to boxing sparring. So I like hit him really hard with like a 1-2. He's like, "Hey, we're going late. Like, relax." I'm like, "Okay, like I'm sorry. Like, that's what I know. Like, I didn't mean any disrespect." He's like, "No, it's okay. Like, we'll just go." And then he proceeded to kick me in the leg for the next 2 minutes until I couldn't walk. Like, I didn't land a single punch. I just kept getting kicked. I'm like, damn, like how do I stop that? And then my second sparring match that day was actually against another pro fighter here in Buffalo, Sean Felton, who was his first day.
Yeah.
And he's like, "Hey man, like today's my first day. I don't really know what I'm doing." And I was like, "Perfect. Today's my first day and I don't know what I'm doing." And we just like went to war. And then after that, I was like, "Okay, like this is totally different. I gotta learn this." And I mean the same thing with jujitsu because I did wrestling in high school. So making the transition from like folk wrestling with like wearing a singlet to going to jujitsu wearing a gi, which is just, in wrestling, the goal is to not be on your back. And like jujitsu, people openly are just like, "Are you slap up and then they just lay down." I'm like, this is weird. So I don't know what to do. And then you can like grab the uniform. It was super weird, but it was cool. And like thankfully, like all the guys at the gym, I like thought they were the coolest thing ever because they were like
Yeah.
MMA fighters. So, and which is what I wanted to do. So
And
thankfully they were cool and I just wanted to get to that level.
so when you got to obviously start working with people who maybe had different experiences than you, and I'm going to assume that most of the people when you came into the gym were a lot older than you, a lot bigger than you, most likely. Um, what is your suggestion to people who have children and they say, you know what, I want my kids to be involved in some sort of martial arts. I want them to have the knowledge of self-defense, but I don't know that I want them, taking a fight at 13 or something like that, or I
Yeah.
don't want them getting beat on by an adult.
Mhm.
What would you say to someone who has those types of concerns?
Yeah, that's a good question. And we get that a lot at the gym, at all levels, kids instructors and adults instructors. I guess my recommendation would to be to just take a trial class, go
Mm.
there, speak to the instructors, get a feel for the kind of person the instructor is. And then, if you feel comfortable with that person, let your child take the class. Obviously stay there and watch them, see how things are going. I wouldn't let them get into sparring immediately unless you're very comfortable with the instructors. And like we have a young kid. I can't remember how old he is. He's under 18 who just started coming in, and his parents are really cool. They stick around and watch, and they're always asking me questions, which is great. And I make sure as an instructor, try to make sure that I am taking care of that person because as a coach, they're trusting you to take care of them, and that's your job as a coach to take care of all your people. So that's
Have
my best recommendation. Make sure you have instructors that you can trust.
So have somebody like you. I got it. All right.
I guess so. Or like you. I mean, you're a pretty trustworthy guy too.
And how did so I know you started out extremely young, and obviously you've grown a lot since the time that you started combat sports. How has your mentality changed as a competitor in that time? Or how, do you even notice a change in your mentality?
Oh yeah, significantly. Just being a little more like understanding to the bigger picture. So, I mean, when I was a kid, it was just kind of living in the moment, like, okay, like I'm sparring all the time and going to the gym, and this is it. You just got to train all the time, and that is what it is. But now, growing older, learning more, not just about like the game, so to speak, but learning about nutrition and recovery and just like life in general puts a different perspective on everything. And as I'm sure you're also realizing, the older you get, the less your body can take just like getting whooped on for like 2.5 hours every day. You come home, you're a little more sore and you got to take care of yourself a little more. So I guess just being a little more strategic, from a competing slash training standpoint, maybe not just going to war every day,
Yeah.
but also just the stuff you do outside of training is just as important. I follow Michael Chandler all the time. He recently
Yeah.
signed with the UFC, former Bellator world champion, and he's very into fitness, super into fitness, but he's always promoting like, I can't work out nearly as hard every day if my recovery isn't on point. So
Yeah.
like that's something big too. I follow like whatever guys I think are like the most physically like fit. I follow them a lot and just kind of emulate what they're doing.
That's awesome. And before we go on to the next portion of the interview, because I do want to talk about, for instance, your military experience and your educational background, because I mean, if people think that your experience in combat sports is interesting, I mean, you've lived a storied life. You've done
It's
quite a
been
bit.
wild.
But you talk about the atmosphere at the gym and loving the people that you're around. And I
Mhm.
just wanted to quickly say that um, in the time that I spent at the gym that we got to train together, I mean, I saw numerous times the amount of sacrifice that fighters would make for each other. And I specifically remember still, I always think about it now, that time when I had to cut weight for my fight before MMA. And so I had to cut about, for people who don't know, I had to cut about 18 or 19 pounds the night before a fight. And these guys, Mike, who else was with us? Nemo and
Mo
Brandon,
is
wasn't?
there, and I think
Oh,
Brandon.
Jared
Oh yeah, yeah,
Jared
yeah.
was there.
Okay, yeah, you're right because we were all fighting that night,
Yeah.
or
And
wasn't, but yeah.
these guys, they stuck with me the entire time through the weight cut, and even when I blacked out and passed out on the floor, uh, they were there with me, the entire time. So
Mhm.
for anyone who thinks that um, fighters are for some reason violent people or uncaring people, or somehow that fighting makes you emotionless, I would challenge that very much, because some of the best people I know are people like yourself that have gone through those experiences in the ring, and in different combat sports. So
Yeah, I'd actually challenge people and say that it's actually the opposite of like emotionless and violent and stuff. As you've seen and as I've seen, a training room is a very diverse and inclusive environment.
oh yeah.
And I think people who do martial arts at any level and any discipline see that it really is include like a lot of these social problems that we're having in the world today just like don't exist because it doesn't matter. Like your technique is going to speak for itself. Your gender, your race, your religious preference, like none of that stuff matters once you're getting down in there. So
Yeah, very well
yeah,
said.
I'd have to agree with you like with that.
So I want to go into a little bit of your military experience, because um, I mean, you've served overseas. You went to Qatar, correct?
Yep, yeah. So I
Okay.
I went to Al Air Base for about 6 months, a little bit less than 6 months. And then I had the opportunity last year to go to England for 6 months, which was really cool. And a couple of small trips every here and there.
Awesome. And what made you actually want to join the military? Was that something that you did looking at some of the benefits? Because I know people do it for, hey, I put in my time and I'll get the college degree and whatever. But or was it more of something that you had wanted to do from a younger age, something that you felt passionate about?
So that's a good question, Donnie. I out of high school, I graduated when I was 17 just because of when my birthday was. And I had this plan like, okay, I'm gonna go to Hilbert College, which is somewhere local here in Buffalo. It's a private college. I'm like, I'm gonna go there for 4 years, get a criminal justice degree, become a police officer, and I'm gonna save the world. And then, my last day of high school, got the bill. And I was like, there's no way. I don't know how to apply for student loans. I don't know none of this stuff. It's not.
Oh yeah, that'll ruin your plans real quick.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. So I was like, I can't do this. So like my last day of high school, my counselor helped me apply for a local community college here. And so I was doing that, and a lot of my, you're when you go from transition out of high school, everyone goes their own separate ways. And I was kind of struggling to like find my place, I guess. I was doing community college and just kind of like partying and didn't really have like a sense of direction. Didn't know what I wanted to do.
Yeah.
So my one of my cousins who had served in the army, he's a disabled veteran, doing very well for himself though, reaped all the benefits you could possibly imagine.
Yeah.
Talked to me about doing the military. And so after a while, and one of our old coaches is actually a recruiter for the Air National Guard. And so he had, talked to me about it too. He's like, once you're getting to that age, it might be something worth doing. So I'm like, all right, whatever. One of my buddies was joining the Marines too. So I'm like, all right, like all these things are kind of pointing towards me checking, putting some thought into this. And I went to our local recruiting center and like I'm looking through all these things and seeing like Marines, Army, coat, whatever. And I'm like looking through my aunt has she served in the Air Force Reserve for 27 years.
Yeah.
So I was like, I saw the sign, I'm like, Air Force Reserve, Aunt Lisa does that. I'm gonna go talk to those people. No idea the difference between active duty and reserve. I had
Yeah.
absolutely no idea. But I go in, talk to the recruiter, and she's kind of explaining to me how it works. She's like, yeah, so like if you sign up for the reserves, like you'll stay here, like your
Yeah.
your base is in Niagara Falls. I'm like, I don't have to go to some random place. That sounds cool. Like I'll do that. And yeah, so I made the decision to join the reserves, and it was great. I got to experience a lot of cool things. It was my first time like going to boot camp was my first time like really leaving home because
Yeah.
we've been on like family vacations and stuff like that, but really like going to the airport by yourself, leaving, going to some strange place where like your literal first experience is like five people screaming at you and you're just like, what the hell is going on? Like I remember my first night in boot camp. I was on the top bunk and I'm laying there like wide open in my brain. I'm thinking, what did I just get myself
Yeah.
into? This is crazy. These people are like, it's like you threw a steak in a room full of like crazy dogs and they were just going to town. I'm like, this is insane. Like, there's no way I'm going to get through this.
Yeah.
But then it happens and then you just kind of move on to the next thing. So,
I mean, the military is definitely no joke, but it seems like it added a lot to your life, and I just want to know if you feel like there was any sort of benefits that you gained from the military that were specific to your athletic career, or if there was anything in your previous athletic career that helped you when in your experience with the Air Force Reserves.
yeah. So, I mean, I guess just like being an athlete, you tend to be a little more coachable than people who aren't, just because that's the environment that athletics uh
Right.
give you. So being able to like take criticism was good when I was in boot camp, but the experience of just the entire experience of joining the military, going away, meeting different people, and the entire overall experience helped significantly in my life. Like I tell people all the time, it was the best decision I ever made.
Yeah.
Really like disciplined me more than anything ever has before, and kind of taught the just basic things like paying attention to detail and like having good situational awareness. If and I guess sometimes this might be considered a weakness in like an interview or something, but anytime I go somewhere in public, like I'm always looking at, looking for exits, like keeping tabs on people that
Yeah.
are around me and stuff. And it's been really beneficial, I think, to me, just from like a taking care of myself standpoint, I guess.
Yeah, absolutely. And when you were in the military, I remember, I think it was when you went to Qatar. I remember we were talking and you had started training with some guys who are on base. Is that correct?
Mhm.
Okay, awesome.
Yeah,
So
so
you got to actually like kind of step up at that point and
mhm.
teach almost, right?
Yeah, so that was really cool. That was like probably like my saving grace when I was deployed. So LUD Air Base is widely known as like the nicest deployment you could go to in the Middle East. The base is really nice, and they had mats there and a jiu-jitsu club. So I'm like, okay, it messed up my schedule big time. Like I definitely didn't get enough sleep every day,
Yeah.
but it's fine. Caffeine helps. Um, but so I started doing this jujitsu club, and I thought it was going to be BS the first day. I remember because I showed up like 15 minutes early, and I'm like on the like helping this white belt like put all the mats out. I'm like, man, if this is the guy running the show, like this is gonna be a mess.
Yeah.
And this brown belt ends up coming in, who's like a I think he was someone somewhere in the Air Force, like security forces or something, and starts teaching like reverse De La Hiva, and I'm like, okay, like I guess this isn't BS. Like guy knows his stuff. And so I was like, all right, I need to do this if I can every day. And everyone's schedule there is different. So people were coming and going all the time. And I met some MMA guys while they were down there. So before jiu-jitsu, we would get together and do some like MMA training, which was great. And then as people were instructors were leaving, they'd be like, hey, like, can you cover this night or that night or whatever. So got to do a little bit of instructing and a lot of training, which was really great.
Yeah, I can imagine that would be a very comforting thing to have,
Mhm.
when you're deployed, to have that outlet. And then once you got back over, for anyone who doesn't know, Mike may be the biggest Disney fan of all time. I don't know. It's pretty close.
I don't know, man. After being down there, I was put in my place real quick.
But I mean, even if you aren't the biggest fan of all time, you are very passionate about Disney.
Yeah, for sure.
You really, really enjoyed your time in the Disney College program, which you actually
Mhm.
got a place in. So, how did that come about?
It was crazy. So I can't remember how I found out about this program. But it was years ago I'd heard about it. Maybe saw like a sign at ECC or whatever. But I never really planned on going to a 4-year college. So as soon as I decided that I was going to go back to school and get my bachelor's degree, that was like the first thing I looked into. I'm like, I got to figure out how to get into this thing.
Yeah,
And UB was not affiliated with the program, so I had to jump through a lot of hoops and do a lot of things on my own to make it work.
right.
But um ended up, the application was pretty it's a difficult program to get into, but the application process isn't very difficult. You
Yeah,
basically take like an online survey, and then from there they send you like, if you get past that point, then you do like another like questionnaire kind of thing.
yeah,
And then after that they'll do a phone interview with you. And I actually was going to try and get into the spring of 2019 program. Then I found out about my 6 month trip in England. So I did like the phone interview. It didn't end up working out for them, but they were like, yeah, it's not a problem. You can always apply for
yeah,
the next semester. So I'm like, all right, go through the process again, go through the phone interview, got the email saying I was accepted, and then it was time to prepare to just like travel down there.
yeah.
So it was really cool. And I think my biggest thing I was nervous about was being stuck with, because I had 5 other roommates when I was there. And my biggest worry was that like my roommates were gonna suck and they were just the worst. And thankfully, I had like the best group of roommates you could wish up.
That's awesome.
Everyone is everyone is very different in their own way,
Yeah,
but everyone was like really, really awesome. And like we still talk basically every day. Not like extensively, but we have like, Snapchat
yeah.
group, text message group, and everyone's
It's
always sending
it's a
messages.
lot
And
more than most roommates.
yeah, pretty much. So that was really cool. And I got to work in Hollywood Studios, which is my favorite park. It was the first park I visited when I was a little kid. So being able to do that, it was kind of like a coming full circle moment, which was cool. and I got to I worked in merchandise, so it was probably the whatever like all the different like careers you could get into there.
Yeah.
I had the most exposure with guests.
Yeah.
So I got to really like brush up on my people skills and like interacting with people. And I actually just shared this on Facebook yesterday was a lot of people who go to Disney. It's sometimes it's not just a vacation. It's their
Yeah.
like escape from life and getting away from a bad thing at home to just kind of let loose and experience some happiness. And I was working in like the Star Wars store, and they used to call it merchantaining, where you'd take like a toy or whatever it is you guys are trying to sell and like play with it so people can see how it's used.
Yeah.
And so I had like a little like R2D2, and I had the remote thing. I put it like behind my back. That's what we would do to make it seem like they were like moving on their own. And so I would like take the little R2D2 and like go up to little kids and like press the talk button and be like beep boop beep boop beep. And I went up to this little girl, and she just looked like a normal little girl, and like started talking to him, and she like thought it was great. So I walked over and I'm like, "Oh, like did you make the R2D2 come up and talk to you?" And like we had this little conversation. Whatever. So a couple minutes later, she comes back and she hands me this thing, and she was like, "Thank you for being nice to me," and then walked away. And I was like, "What?" So I read this card, and it basically said like, "Thank you for making magic," and that she was like a cancer survivor. And dude, let me tell you, I had to turn around. I looked at like whoever I was working with. I was like, "I need to take five," and like went in the back room. I started crying my eyes out, man. Like,
Yeah.
because that would like, I mean, they're always promoting about like us, trying to make the guest the center of attention. Like they're the star of the show. And for that to be like, you don't really do it for recognition, but getting recognition and letting the cast members know that you're making a difference,
Yeah. Absolutely.
huge. And that was like it kind of refocused me while I was down there to be like, okay, like it might not seem like I'm just here like bullshit, and like this is important for people.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, s- for a lot of families, it is just a vacation, but for some people, like you said, it is an escape from their daily reality, and that might not be such a great reality, you know?
Yeah,
Um,
we got a lot of people from like South America, believe it or not.
really?
And yeah, a lot of people from South America, a lot of Spanish speaking people, a little Portuguese, but mostly Spanish. And so a lot of the full-time cast members there like spoke Spanish just because they had a lot of
That's
Hispanic
awesome.
individuals. And one of my first trainer that I had when I was there said to me, and I kind of held on to this the whole time I was there, was, you get your people who are annual pass holders come here every year, every month sometimes. But you have some people who this is the only time they're ever going to be here.
Yeah.
Like this is the only time they're ever going to have this experience. And it's our job to make sure that it's something they'll never forget and they'll hold on to the rest of their life. I was like, damn, like that,
Yeah.
that hits you. And I try to apply that really in everything I do. You never know what people are going through or what their situation is. So if you can have a positive impact on them, then you're making the world a better place.
Absolutely.
And we
I
all
mean,
need that right now.
yeah, we do, especially in
Yeah.
2020.
Yeah,
Um,
man.
and once you did finish the Disney college program and you came back home, is that when you took up your position as the treasurer for the Veterans Business Association at UB?
Hmm.
Okay, so you did that
Yeah.
afterwards.
Hmm.
And I know that I do want to go into your work as at UB
Hmm.
with veterans, but specifically in regards to mental health. I know that you are passionate about mental health in general and mental health specifically for veterans. Why is that the sort of issue that you've chosen to pioneer, that you've chosen to take up?
I feel like it's not something that gets enough exposure. Unfortunately, I know a few people who have taken their own life, and it always I'm very like hard on myself, I guess. Maybe it's from years of competition or not. So anytime, I hear something like that, even if it's not someone I knew very well, I'm like, damn, like what?
What
could
could I have
I
done?
have done
Yeah.
to help this person? And to, I don't know, I guess put that thought process into everything. I'm like, there's got to be something that people can do. And maybe that's a little bit selfish because someone who makes that decision, it's ultimately their
Yeah.
something about them. It's not about me or you or whatever. But you can only control what you can control. So
Yeah.
that's always something. And let's face it, I mean, now more than ever, life sucks sometimes. And it sucks more when people blatantly do not care.
Yeah.
So even if you can just like put on a mask and pretend,
Yeah.
that could be the difference between helping and not helping. There was a time a few years ago, I broke my ankle training and I had to get surgery, so I was out for a while. And it was a shit show. All these complications and whatever. I'd never broken a bone in my life, but like beside that, just taking time off of training and whatever was a lot. And so I don't know, having trouble dealing, but nothing too crazy, just like frustrated. So there was a local like carnival coming around. So my mom and I went to the beer tent. So I'm like on crutches in this beer tent, hobbling around, like just hanging out. And I had like a remember everyone's deployed shirt because it was a Friday and that's how I do
Yeah.
on Fridays. And this dude came up to me and he was like, "Hey man, like I just want to say I really like your shirt." And I was like, "Oh, cool. Like, thanks, man. I appreciate that. Cheers." And he was like, "Yeah, like I don't want to bother you. I just, I really liked your shirt." And I was like, "That's cool, man." And he started to walk away and I was like, "Wait, like, military? Are you just like a supporter?" And so I started talking to this kid, and he was like, "Yeah, yeah, like whatever." He was in the Marines, and he
Hmm.
was like, "Oh, like let me get you around." And I was like, "Oh, not gonna say no to a free drink."
Yeah.
So, I ended up hanging out with this kid all night, and at the end of the night, he's like, "Hey, like, I just want to say it was really nice talking to you. I'm gonna head out." And I was like, "Yeah, it was nice meeting you, man. Like, good luck with whatever it is you choose to do." And he was like, "No, like, I really needed this." And I was like, okay, like cool. And he's like, no, 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 like I was gonna come here, get wasted, and go home and kill myself. And I was like, what? He's like, yeah, but like, talking to someone who I never met before that just cared about me and was genuine. Like you gave me hope for the future. So I'm gonna start figuring out, make a game plan for the rest of my life. I was like, holy shit. Like I was
Yeah.
not expecting this. Dude just seemed like just like a weird guy, but that experience made me kind of reconsider the way I think about people, like how they act. Like, okay, if this person is being weird or whatever, like, why are they being weird?
Yeah.
Are they just socially awkward or is there something going on? And having that impact kind of like, I guess, is what really put me in this position where, like, okay, if you have the opportunity to help someone, you should. Like, it's your job as a human to help people.
And I think that really does a good job of bringing us to the next point, because at this point, I mean, the people out there listening might want to actually do something. They might want to say, you know what, how do I help in this regard? How can I help veterans? How can I get involved in mental health? And what are some recommendations you have for people?
I mean, the first thing is to just be nice to everyone. Like, to me, that's like I can't understand why people just don't do that already. But you see it, especially on social media, it's the worst, man.
Yeah.
But first, just be nice to people. Like, it's as someone who gets spun up pretty quick, like I understand it's very easy to like jump to conclusions, but having the self-control to like stop yourself, bring it back, and consider like be a little empathetic to people
Yeah.
is like the number one thing you could possibly do. And then I would say just like look into things in your local community. I think people get too caught, including myself, get too caught up in the big picture, and not one person can't change the whole world, but you can have a significant impact on your local community and the people closest to you. So looking into things in your local community to like help out is huge. And I also follow I know you know about the old Vans Warp Tour.
Yeah.
The last Warp Tour in Buffalo. I have a semicolon tattoo, and I've had it for a couple years. And I was walking through Warp Tour, the last one, and this lady came up to me and she was like, "Oh, like I saw your semicolon tattoo. That's really cool." And I was like, "Oh, like thanks." And she started talking to me, like, "Oh, like is that for you? Are you an advocate? Like, what's the deal?" And then through our conversation, she was like, "Oh, I'm a representative of a company called Heart Support. Have you ever heard of that?" No, no idea. And basically, with this organization, it's ran by the lead singer of August Burns Red, I
Yeah.
believe. And they basically just like support mental health, people with mental health issues in the like hardcore heavy metal community. And they're really awesome. The guy who runs it, I forget his name, like he's wrote a couple books. They have all these, if you go to their website, they
Yeah.
have all these resources for people to use. And that was a good place for me to learn stuff.
Awesome. And I know we've covered a lot of heavy material. We've
Mhm.
touched on some some subjects that aren't the easiest to talk about. So I want to pivot a little bit and do some fun questions. Okay.
Cool.
So, and actually, you just brought up Vans Warp Tour. You brought up music,
Mhm.
so that works
Mhm.
even better because I want to know your three favorite musicians. Okay, three favorite artists
Oh
can be
man.
dead or alive. Can be dead or
Okay.
alive. Can
All
any time
right.
period. I want to know what's the ultimate, the top three.
Uh, um, in no particular order. Metallica is definitely up there.
That's a good one.
My dad was a huge Metallica fan. I grew up listening to Metallica and I still listen to them to this day. Um, I really, really like Rise Against. Um,
Yes.
old Rise, probably like post like before like 2012. Um, like they got me through a lot of stuff. They're really great. One of my favorite concerts was Rise Against. And then ah, I'm gonna switch it up a little bit and I really like J. Cole.
Oh, all
I
right.
really like J. Cole. I like his style. Not so I mean, I like his music style, but just like
Yeah.
the way he carries himself, I think he's like a great dude.
Yeah.
Um, so I think J. Cole.
I mean, yeah, those are, I can't argue with those picks. Those are all solid picks, you know? But this might be a little bit harder because I'm only going to give you one. If you could train
Oh
with
man.
anyone, living or dead, all right, anybody throughout history, someone that you would want to, let's say, take a private lesson from, who would it be?
That's so tough. Um, I don't know. Let me think about that for a minute. There's so many people, and I used to like keep tabs in my brain all the time about this when I was younger. But honestly, I think I'd want to train with Wiz Khalifa.
Wiz Khalifa, really?
Yeah,
You know,
I
he's
guess Wiz
super
Khalifa
serious
is,
about it now. Super serious
yeah,
about it.
exactly. He brings, I guess, to all his concerts, he brings mats with him. And
Yeah.
like, if he, like, whoever he has with him, they'll hold pads for him before he goes out on stage, or like, he'll roll, he does jujitsu.
He looks
So I
completely
think Wiz,
different.
yeah, he looks shredded.
Yeah.
So I think I would want to train with Wiz Khalifa. Unless you want like a actual like
No, no, no.
MMA person.
No,
Okay.
that's a solid pick, and that's not at all what I was expecting, which makes it even better. That makes it an even better answer. And
Wiz Khalifa's up there too with one of my favorite musicians.
dude, you gotta love Wiz Khalifa. Like he always
You
drops
can't
some solid
dislike the
releases,
guy.
you know. Um,
Yeah, no, you can't dislike him.
and this I've been asking to everybody because, of course, we brought up earlier. It's 2020. The world is ending. What did you do during quarantine? What's a hobby you picked up?
So I don't know if I got back into reading when I was in during quarantine, but when this all started, I was like half mid semester. So well, like halfway through, I was working on schoolwork, just like trying to get that stuff figured out. And then literally like the week school ended, I got orders to go work at the base. And then I worked at the base basically until this semester started.
Yeah.
Um, So actually, I guess you could say a skill that I picked up was training, training individuals
Yeah.
at work because um, I took a couple more additional duties at the base and I was training our new airmen. So being more of a supervisor.
And is that something that you uh, had not wanted to do earlier, and something that you kind of, once you did it, found this love for it, or was it something that you always felt an
Well,
affinity for?
it was something that was bound to happen eventually. I'm eligible to promote to E6 right now. The last uh opportunity I wasn't selected. And when I wasn't selected, they said it was due to a lack of leadership experience. So at that point on, that was in February. So from then on, like I've been trying to get take advantage of
Take every chance you can.
every opportunity. So I
Yeah,
had three over the summer. I had between one and three trainees and was just trying to teach them day-to-day operations. And it was cool. It was a different perspective. As you know, being in having experience as an instructor, when you teach someone something, you're also teaching it back to yourself.
yeah,
So it definitely challenged me to be on top of my game, but also how to learn how different people learn and everything that goes into personalities.
that's awesome. Uh, well, I'm going to leave it there because I think we've pretty much talked for about 50 minutes now at this point. We've had a
Pretty much.
pretty good sized discussion. But I want to
You know
thank you
I'm
again.
long-winded, man.
No, Mike, this is why I have you on, because I knew you'd have all the material. I knew. Um, but I just want to thank you again for coming on. You're a good friend. You are an incredible person. I love the stuff that you're doing right now. I hope that
Appreciate it, man.
you keep going on
Same.
in your endeavors. Finish strong. Right now, you are a senior at University of Buffalo, so make sure
Sir,
once you're out, I know people are going to be looking for you because with all the
let's
experience that you
hope
have,
so.
dude, you definitely are. I know. So just really quick before we were talking, when we were trying to line up a time for the interview, and you said, you know what, I'm not really too sure what's going to happen, after school. And I don't
Mhm.
think that's something that you really have to worry about, because I think anyone who's hearing this can tell that you are going to have plenty of opportunities once you're out of school, because
Well,
um,
thanks, man.
you have a wealth of experience, man, and you are a
Appreciate it.
quality person. So
And you
thank you so
finished
much.
strong too. I know you're grinding with school and everything too. And hopefully once travel restrictions start to wind down a little bit, we can take a trip out to Cali and see your
Yeah.
neck of the woods.
Yeah, you definitely have to. So, Mike, thank you again. And that's it for us.
Thank you. It was good catching up, Donnie.